there's honestly not a whole lot to talk about in today's review of Transformers Prime. Like, honestly, I could have almost merged this review with the next one if it wouldn't have made that review super long and screwed up the consistency that I've got going with these reviews so far, which would have bothered me. Because while these first 5 episodes are a 5-episode arc, this episode is the first, and I would say probably the only one of the 5, which feels like pure build-up for the one that comes after it, and not a whole lot more. It does start out with a few, admittedly quick, but still effective clips of the kids getting to know their Autobot companions. While it is happening fast, probably a little faster than you would expect considering that she just lost someone, we do see that RC really is taking to Jack. We get to see that Raph and Bumblebee really enjoy each other's company, and that at the very least, Miko enjoys Bulkhead's company. Like, clearly he doesn't hate Miko or anything, but I really get the sense here that Bulkhead has the least in common with his human companion. The start of this episode actually subverts some expectations by very quickly wrapping up some of the stuff that the previous episode left us with. There is a bit of a time jump to allow for these scenes that the kids share with their Autobot companions, and during that time, the piece of equipment that was brought to life by the Dark Energon attacks and is quickly dispatched by Optimus Prime. And Megatron is able to get control of the Dark Energon that he pumped himself full of using the force of his will. He is now confident that he can control the substance to the point that he can resurrect other Transformers with it, similarly to how he resurrected Cliffjumper, and actually control them. And so he puts in motion a plan to test this. Meanwhile, now having observed the ability of this substance to bring an inanimate object to life, Optimus and Ratchet have enough information to determine that it is Dark Energon. This allows Optimus to quickly deduce Megatron's plan. Because remember, in this continuity, they are old friends. They know each other super well. They can anticipate each other's thoughts pretty consistently. Optimus, realizing that somebody needs to watch the kids, decides to take only Ratchet with him to try to thwart Megatron. He doesn't reveal yet what he thinks Megatron's plan is, which is a little odd, but I understand it from a narrative point of view. Still, I kind of feel like if he had revealed the severity of Megatron's plan to everyone before he left, maybe the others wouldn't have done the cascading Rube Goldberg machine of idiotic things that they did after Optimus left. He puts RC in charge, which is cool, because it means that after him, RC is second in command, unless Ratchet is second in command, in which case she's third in command, but either way, she's a pretty high rank, and liking her character, I do like that. But she doesn't want to just sit in the command center, so as soon as he's gone, she takes Bumblebee out for a drive, leaving Bulkhead in command, and he's a great guy, but he is not particularly quick-witted. So there is no one at the base equipped to deal with Agent Fowler when he shows up all pissed off about the giant Energon crater that they created in the last episode. Bulkhead fumbles the ball, and the kids aren't able to recover it in time, and so he discovers their presence. This is the scene where we get the first indication that Fowler is not just some dick who doesn't like the Autobots, that he really is a good guy trying to do the right thing. When he sees the kids, his demeanor changes. He stops acting all puffed up, as if he's trying to make himself look bigger in the presence of these oversized creatures, and begins to appear genuinely disappointed in them for keeping this from him, genuinely disappointed in them for dragging humans into this in the first place. And he seems genuinely concerned for the well-being of the kids. He does try to take them into his custody, only stopping when Bulkhead doesn't let him do so. Looking genuinely disappointed in the Autobots, he storms out and sends a signal out to his superiors that he's coming back with something important to tell them. Fortunately, in the long run, because it does end up preventing things between Fowler and the Autobots from escalating further, he mentions the Autobot base, and so Soundwave takes note of his signal and at Starscream's behest sends his chest minion Laserbeak to bring Fowler in so that they can interrogate him. That's the nice word for what they do, to try to learn the location of the Autobot base. And what's cool is, Fowler is in a helicopter. Helicopters are not the most maneuverable of aircraft. And yet Laserbeak comes at him with the relative flight capabilities of a jet, and technology significantly more advanced than what Fowler has on hand. And yet Fowler actually manages to outfly him at first and even do some damage. Turns out Fowler's kind of a badass. He's a really great pilot and kind of an all-around badass person. This is an excellent scene and a super necessary one, because Fowler is captured by Laserbeak. He is taken back to the Decepticon warship Nemesis, and he is tortured for information. And while it's not as brutal as it could have been, it's still kind of dark for a kids show, and so it's important that they leave us with a sense that we should care about Fowler and whether or not he survives. And if you missed that he was genuinely concerned for the kids back in the base, giving us an action scene where we get to see how badass he is and start rooting for him does the job. He's captured, he sends out an SOS that the Autobots pick up, or rather, Bulkhead and the kids pick up, because remember, everybody else is still out. And the kids convince Bulkhead that he has to go after Fowler. One, it's the right thing to do, and two, Fowler just showed that he backs down from a bot very quickly. So with a little help from Raph, they're able to triangulate where he is, and Bulkhead, knowing that it will leave the base completely unprotected and the kids unsupervised, round bridges himself there and discovers the Nemesis parked in a canyon. Literally, the entire Decepticon force is between him and Fowler, and yet he still intends to go in. The implication being that he's trying to hurry before Fowler breaks. But as all of this is happening, Fowler is being tortured, and he's not breaking. He didn't back down from Bulkhead back in the base because he was afraid of him. He backed down from him because he respected him enough not to push things when he didn't feel that he needed to yet. Now, faced with these Decepticons who he doesn't respect and who he knows are bad, he is resisting their torture techniques, and it's actually pretty amazing. And yes, come next episode, he does eventually break. There is a point where he is about to give them information, but he still holds out long enough for the Autobots to get there before he does. And that's pretty remarkable. Like, this episode and the next one, they kind of make Fowler cool. This episode, though, does a bit more of a disservice to another character. You may have noticed that I don't always have the nicest things to say about Miko. Like, I don't know if I've said this yet, but I don't dislike her character, I just dislike some of the ways that she was written, and this is kind of the start of that. Turns out she snuck through the ground bridge with Bulkhead because she honestly thinks that she is 100% safe with him and that she will actually be able to make a difference in the fight. She wants that added bit of excitement in her life, and she is willing to risk her life and risk Bulkhead's life by splitting his focus if it means that she can get that. If you ask a fan of this show who their least favorite character is, most of them will say Miko, and it's for exactly this reason. And while she does get better later on, there's never really any indication that it's because she matured past this. Like, she very clearly learns that she doesn't belong on the battlefield with these giant robots. But still, if she can find an excuse to be there, she will typically go there. That's just something that she does. And while, again, I do like her character overall, this aspect of her character is super annoying. Miko following Bulkhead through the ground bridge gets Jack and Raph worried about her, so they ground bridge themselves there, putting themselves in danger to try to rescue her. While meanwhile, Optimus and Ratchet reach the same location that Megatron was already flying towards. They get there at about the same time he does. En route, we learned from Optimus, as he told Ratchet, that towards the end of the original Civil War between Autobots and Decepticons, both sides started hiding Energon off-world, and so that led to major battles being fought on planets other than Cybertron, and one such planet was Earth. There is a massive gravesite of buried dead Cybertronians on Earth, one that both Optimus and Megatron know about. And so that's where Optimus figured that Megatron would go to create his Dark Energon army, and he's right. This leads to one of the most dynamic scenes in Transformers history. Megatron launches Dark Energon into the ground and raises an entire army of zombies under his direct control. It's a fantastic scene and a fantastic way to end off this episode. Like, I honestly don't remember if it's the very last scene of the episode, despite the fact that I literally just watched the episode, because it's such a dynamic scene that it feels like the last note that this episode leaves off on. Even if it's not, it ends up being the last thing that you remember about the episode. It's an excellent scene, and I almost put it for the cover of this video, but I decided to save it for the cover of the next video. But at least I did include it in this video, and I'll show it again right now because it's just that awesome. And overall, this is a good episode. It just really feels like it leaves you hanging, more so than the last two episodes did, even though every single one of these episodes has been part of a multi-part arc. But it does its job. It sets up all these intriguing scenarios, all these really neat, dangerous scenarios, and hooks you into wanting to watch the next episode immediately. I know, because I watched the next episode immediately. Both times that I went back and rewatched this episode in preparation for this review, I watched the next episode immediately. I couldn't help myself. If the first episode of this 5-part arc was establishing the show itself, and the second one was general world building, this episode is preparing for the climax of this specific 5-episode arc. And for what it is, it does the job excellently. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of this episode of Transformers Prime if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.